Okay, welcome everyone. We will get started and call to order our regular meeting of council. We'll start by recognizing that we are holding our meeting today on the unceded territories of the Sechot and Hupachesit First Nation, and just appreciating that we're able to be here. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items that councillors would like to add? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering if you could raise under new business, I'd like to talk about the state of our emergency department at a hospital and the shortage of doctors in general, and if there's a role that the city could play in this problem that we're currently facing. Thanks.
Absolutely, and I can update on some of the conversations and meetings that I've had and the work the city is doing there. Any late items to be added from the corporate officer?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda as amended with the addition of the new item?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Washington. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And we have meetings from the special meeting held at 9:30 a.m. and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on June 27th, 2022.
So moved.
Moved to adopt by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Are there any comments on the minutes or items councillors would like to address? Okay, seeing none, on the motion to adopt, all in favor? Carried. And our next item is public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each are accommodated. And I will just note first that I know we do have several members of the public in attendance today to speak potentially to the temporary use permit application for the for the Salvation Army at the Bread of Life. And I would just ask that that not be addressed during public input period. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to speak when we get to that item on our agenda. I will be recusing myself from that item, so I'd rather not have comments on it now, but rather when we get to the item on the agenda. Okay, so with that said, would any members of the public like to come forward to speak to other items today?
Don't be shy.
Okay. Then we have no delegations today and no unfinished business, so we will move on to accounts, to staff reports, and item number 1 is accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the certification of the Director of Finance dated July 11, 2022 be received and checks numbering 150797 to 150874, inclusive, in payments of accounts totaling $2,090,116.46 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Washington, seconded by Councillor Poon. All in favor?
Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Just because it's a couple $1 million, I've asked Andrew, our Director of Finance, to explain at least one check.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with the last check requisition, the RCMP contract was within that. So that's approximately $1.5 million for our quarterly contracts. So that's why the amount that was paid over the past couple of weeks has been higher than usual.
Thank you. Okay. Then moving on to item number 2 from the Economic Development Manager, we have the Municipal and Regional District Tax Funding Contribution. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. First, I do want to thank you for your recent support for the MRDT. As you know, it's a goal of councils in support of the tourism sector of the economy. When our application went forward, it gets reviewed first by Destination BC before it goes in front of the provincial cabinet. And Destination BC asked that there be a line item marking municipal contribution of some dollars to tourism marketing. I had argued prior to this that the money that was being paid by the city to the operation of the Visitor Information Center and to the operation of McLean Mill was the city's support for tourism, but Their view is that because the Chamber of Commerce is the recipient for those two items, and Alberni Valley Tourism is becoming the DMO, that it's only funding to Alberni Valley Tourism that gets recognized in the application. They are going to amend our application to note that the city provides this additional support, but they are still looking for a line item in the application. As you may have seen, in the application, there's $15,000 proposed. That was to come from both the city and the regional district. So currently, the regional district is, I understand, proposing $4,000. I'm asking for $10,000 from the city be acknowledged as an ongoing contribution to tourism marketing. It's about half of what we have paid each year over the last 5 years to tourism marketing. That's been matched by Alberni Valley Tourism and then topped up by Destination BC for the marketing that we have done to this point in time. So I just want to make the point that the ask is being made by Destination BC and not Alberni Valley Tourism, and that the ask, if the council makes a commitment to that contribution of $10,000, it's for the term of the first MRDT agreement, which is 5 years. I think that's all I need to say. Happy to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you, Pat. I know that this has been a long-term initiative to get this hotel tax back going in our community and match really what communities are already bringing in terms of non-direct direct taxpayer-funded revenue for tourism marketing in their community. So I'm thrilled that we have gotten to this point with the support of the hoteliers, and I know that you've had a huge part in that, done a lot of work, as has Bill Collette, and of course the Barclay Hotel. So I personally am completely supportive of this funding, and I think it's incredibly important that the regional district contributes as well. A bit disappointed to hear that they're requesting to drop it $1,000. But we have been having more conversations around the board table about, you know, the need for the regional district to recognize their role in the tourism industry and contribute appropriately. So hopefully if we can get a contribution from them at this point, that's at least a positive step in the right direction.
Right.
Comments? Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the city will be contributing around you're asking for $10,000, and the MRDT tax will bring in approximately $160,000 per year in direct dollars. Is that correct?
That's what we're hoping. In the application, we were very conservative with the amount that we put forward. You may have noted in the budget that we are actually only anticipating that it'll be in the region of $108,000.
Okay.
Now, we currently, or actually up until the beginning of 2022, when 4 properties were collecting a destination management fee, it was amounting to about $70,000 annually. So we do think it will get up to about 160, but for purposes of this application, and given that we're still kind of recovering from the pandemic travel and the fact that we've now, you know, the number of properties that converted to longer-term tenancy during the pandemic we're saying 100,000 from, 100,000 from the properties and then another 8,000 from online. I hope we'll be surprised as other communities are in a very positive way, but we'll see.
Great, thank you. And we also have to remember there's going to be indirect dollars come into the community as well, with people eating in our restaurants and shopping in our retail stores and buying groceries. So I think this is a very good return on investment dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for our friends at home, the 10,000, is that a line budget item, or is it coming, where's it coming from?
Pat.
It's coming from the economic development allocation. So we have 2 line items in the economic development budget, one for marketing and one for advertising. And currently they stand at $70,000. We haven't spent anywhere near that amount of money because we're just halfway through the year. But normally there would be $20,000 coming from that going to tourism marketing.
And this is a designation of existing budget, not addition to that budget. So there's no change. It's
That's
making
correct.
sure that it goes for that purpose, but not adding to the existing budget that is there.
That's right.
And of course, it's money that we're already spending anyway, so it's just making sure it goes there. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Paulson.
In reading through your report, and you're very thorough with appendixes and stuff, great program and a great plan moving forward, long-range plan. I noticed that in the listed tourism features, number 1 was Stamp River, number 2 was Alberni Pacific Railroad and McLean Mill, number 3 was Log Train Trail, number 4 was MV Barclay, and number 5 was the petroglyphs. I think we could expand that list. Sprout
Yep.
Lake and Harbor Key, and I think we could have a lot of fun with it, Pat. So
Yep.
thanks for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson, would you like to read the motion?
I'd like to move that council approve a contribution of $10,000 annually for a 5-year term to Alberni Valley Tourism, AVT, from the Economic Development Allocation in support of marketing initiatives as identified in the AVT Municipal Regional District Tax, MRDT, 5-year plan, 2023 to 2028, attached to this report and dated May the 2nd, 2022.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Poon. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3 from the Manager of Planning, temporary use permit for 3130 3rd Avenue, and I will be recusing myself due to conflict, and so Councillor Haggard will take over.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the temporary use permit for 3130 3rd Avenue. Unfortunately, our Manager of Planning is out of the office today, so I think the CEO is prepared to speak on this. If you'd like to proceed, CEO.
Thank you, Chair Haggard. Yes, and unfortunately, the author of the report is not able to attend today, so I would suggest, Chair and Council, that we review the staff report together, and noting that the applicant for the temporary use permit is in the room today, I would suggest that after we review the report, Council might want to hear from the applicant directly. So the staff report that is in Council's agenda, written obviously for the purpose of supporting Council in considering the issuance of a temporary use permit for a portion of the property at 3130 3rd Avenue for a transition house use to allow for low barrier shelter to be operated by the Salvation Army with funding from BC Housing. So background to this, at your previous meeting of Council, June 27th, Council received a staff report providing information related to temporary use permits in general, and also included information specific to this application for discussion purposes and in advance of council, seeking council direction today. And a temporary use permit, as you discussed earlier, is permitted under the Local Government Act for a period of up to 3 years and may be renewed one time for a further 3-year term. The objective of a temporary use permit is to allow a use not permitted by the zoning and to specify general conditions of use in a permit issued by council. So options that staff have identified for council, the recommended option is that council issue a temporary use permit and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign such permit. For that portion is shown on page 3 of a staff report and highlighted in yellow for the property at 3031 3rd Avenue, Bread of Life Center, to operate the transition house referred to. And that conditions are as follows: completion of a good neighbor agreement, an approved fire plan, compliance with permits for renovations and operations that have been approved to the satisfaction of the building inspector, and a safety plan that is approved by the RCMP. Alternate options for council's consideration identified by staff are that council might provide alternate direction with regard to the permissions and conditions outlined in a temporary use permit, and alternatively, council can deny the temporary use permit. Looking at, under analysis, looking at the issue a little further, as mentioned earlier at your previous council meeting, staff provided an analysis of the existing land use for the subject property and reviewed the application for temporary use permit against the existing policies in the city's official community plan, Section C, plan, goals, and land use, Section 3.0, temporary use permits. So Section 3.0 outlines 4 policies for council to consider when contemplating issuing a temporary use permit. Staff have reviewed those policies for alignment, and staff confirms that the subject property meets the following policies: that it is designated general commercial in the OCP as required for you to consider issuing a temporary use permit. That the permit is for a 3-year term with which is the maximum permitted length of time, and that the situation meets long-term policy through addressing council's strategic priority, specifically number 5, fostering a complete community. Obviously, that's in the corporate strategic plan. And lastly, this maintains a reasonable level of compatibility with surrounding development. The current floor layout is illustrated in the report and shows, highlighted in yellow, the area of the structure that is proposed to be used for transition housing. The transition housing use will be separated from what's known as the soup kitchen portion of the building by fire doors, and the 2 spaces will be addressed separately for ease of operations. The applicant's architect will prepare a technical review of the area for code compliance, that's fire and building codes, to occupy along with a 2-scale drawing, design drawing for review by city staff, which is normal process for a building of this type. City staff did undertake a site inspection on June 29th, 2022. So scrolling down the report, in terms of implications, there is no expansion. No, thank you. Lost me. There's no expansion to the building proposed in the application. Renovations are internal to the building, and so they will require an architect's involvement, and that will be to accommodate 25 beds, along with the necessary upgrades to washroom facilities, including shower and laundry. The renovations will address accessibility requirements for the needs of clients and certainly safety. The floor plans are being designed by an architect who will assess the space for code requirements and provide Salvation Army with the technical requirements for code compliance and for any required permits necessary prior to occupancy. So council, that summarizes the staff report. If you have questions for me now, I can speak to those, or if you'd like to hear from the proponent, it's at your discretion, Madam Chair.
What is council's preference? Would you like to hear from the proponent first before we ask questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Ramsey, would you like to come up and speak on the application, please?
I think I'll defer to Colin for first crack at it here.
And I'll just like to remind the audience that you will be given an opportunity to speak after proponent and questions from council. So please just wait your turn. Thank you.
So
Go
do you
ahead,
want me to
Colin.
speak in general or questions?
Speak in general first, and then the council will have questions.
Okay, so maybe I'll do a really brief timeline going back to how this project came to be and where we're at. To approximately 2020, let's call it October 2020, it was identified that there was a lack of public spaces, largely due to COVID, for those that are homeless or underhoused. To go to libraries were closed, cafes were closed, there was a general lack of spaces, so we did a renovation on the space in the yellow to accommodate a warming and drop-in center. So through that first winter, we operated on a very scaled down, it was 4 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week. And then we approached BC Housing about funding it to be a year-round drop-in center. Typically, BC Housing does not fund drop-in centers or warming centers, but because of COVID funding, they were able to provide us a 1-year contract. And as that contract came to an end this past year, they approached us about whether we would consider turning it into a year-round 24-hour shelter due to our current shelter on 8th Avenue being over capacity most nights and a growing need. And they felt that their experience with us in that year made us a suitable option, and that the building would be sufficient with renovations. So then we started the process of course, this temporary use permit, yeah, so that's kind of got us to where we are today. We've made an effort over the last couple of weeks to touch base with many local surrounding businesses. We were able to connect with Dog Mountain, that's right across the street, Coastal Restoration, which is set to make a big investment in the area, and numerous others. Some were just largely in support. Some had a lot of questions and concerns that we were able to address. So a summary of the concerns, I would say, first of all, largely the concerns that came up were more associated with the soup kitchen, but still relevant if we're going to expand our hours from 7 hours to 24 per day. So one was waste coming from the soup kitchen. Unfortunately, because of COVID regulations, we had to go away from using dishes that we could serve on and just wash. We were having to go to almost exclusively takeout containers. Also, for most of 2 years, we were encouraging people not to come in and congregate for long periods of time, so we were allowing one person to come and pick up for 4 or 6 to make sure the food was getting where it needed to go without having unnecessary congregation during COVID. So we are now transitioning transitioning away from takeout containers. I signed a contract today for a lease of a commercial dishwasher, so as soon as that's installed in the next couple of weeks, then we'll go almost completely away from takeout containers. So that should drastically reduce the water bottles, the coffee cups, and the food containers that were an unfortunate reality of the last couple of years. Another major concern was congregating of people on the sidewalk and extra traffic. So as far as how that relates to the shelter, it will be operated from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., 25 beds, and it will not be in and out. So obviously during the day we see 150 people a day, and it is constant traffic in and out, in and out, in and out. At night, once they're in, which is going to be a lot easier to control. There's been concerns about the use of the sidewalk space in front, so we're in the process of tentatively had a grant approved to build a patio off of the back in the backyard, which will allow people to go outside to smoke or to hang out at night, or just generally keep people off of the sidewalk and keep them in a contained space in the back. It'll be nicer for them as well to be out of sight, and we'll be able to build a little garden area and make it a little bit nicer. And then we've also just recently completed a fence around the full backyard, which so far since it's been installed is really alleviate a lot of the illegal dumping that we were seeing a lot of, a lot less traffic going through, cutting across that back area, and a lot less congregating back there when they're out of sight and we don't know they're there, or during off hours. So I know there's still some major concerns that people have, and hopefully we can address them today and work on them in the future.
Thank you, Colin. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Colin did great.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there questions from council? Councillor Polson?
Yeah, the temporary use permit is exactly as it says, it's temporary use. So, we all have dreams and goals. What's the long-term stretched out vision that you guys might have? I mean, you know my feeling that it's not really the right spot, but what's the long-term? We're gonna build something more permanent,
I mean,
something nicer, brighter?
the pipe dream is that we are able to support these people and get them into to more long-term housing, but obviously the reality being that services like this are going to be most likely needed. So we would start working almost immediately with BC Housing on a more permanent, long-term, purpose-built facility that would be able to potentially house all of Salvation Army's operations. Yeah, I mean, we want to look at that option right away.
Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Chair Haggard. Question I have is that under the recommendations, number 1 is completion of a good neighbor agreement. I guess this would be more for the CAO to sort of just sort of expand on that, because it's one of the first recommendation for this to get approved.
Yes, good neighbor agreement would involve working with the neighbors, spelling out in written form what the obligations are in terms of cleanliness and noise infractions and those sorts of things. I understand BC Housing is supporting in potentially drafting that document.
I think to speak to that, I just think the reality is that it's going to be impossible for us to promise that we're going to be 100% good neighbors at all times, just due to the nature of our clientele, but I hope we can address those issues as they come up and prevent as much as possible.
Any other questions from council?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good neighbor policy, so temporary use permit, if God forbid everything goes wrong, can we as a city pull that permit and everything stops?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And to your question, Councillor Washington, yes, council has the ability to withdraw a permit after it's been issued.
Thank you.
Any last comments, Colin, before we go to the public?
No, I think it'll be good to hear from the public and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Before we ask the public to give the opportunity for public to come up and speak, I'd like to remind you to please be respectful. No booing, no clapping of hands, or you'll be asked to leave. We want everybody to feel comfortable and safe in speaking in this environment. So now is the opportunity to come up and speak. If you'd like to raise your hand. Come on up, sir. And please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rick Slemko. I own the H&R block right next door to this man here, I guess, running the Bread of Life. His name's Colin. This is the first time I've met this fella, and I'm the direct neighbor. There's been no neighbor consultation, none at all. I sent you all emails of a letter I wrote to you. I'm going to read it out loud because I'm shaking angry, and I'm hoping that this letter will help calm me down. I've been paying taxes in this town for 34 years. I buy business licenses, and I live and operate a business right next door to the Bread of Life. I did not complain when the Bread of Life began operating, and I have dealt with numerous inconveniences in the ensuing years, including numerous syringes, dirty clothing, garbage, food leftovers, and on more than one occasion I've had to pick up human feces. Most nights, especially when the warming center was operating, people would sleep on my front steps. And when I come home to my house, as I live in that building, there's almost always an argument as to whose steps they really are. I have had customers of my business on numerous occasions call me and ask me to remove the person sitting on the front steps so they could feel safe entering my place of business. In regards to parking, I have not enough spaces outside my office, and I wonder what's going to happen when 25 transitioning occupants move into the Bread of Life, and what's going to happen when they have visitors coming. Is there no parking bylaws? You know, I don't understand. Like, this is ludicrous. 25 people? I think maybe some of the hotels here would be happy to have 25 people in them. Perhaps something like the Kingsway would be more suitable for 25-bed transition house. The Bread of Life is far too small for this. There is no outdoor space for any of the people who frequent this establishment, and we'll have another 25 people loitering up and down one of the busiest streets in Port Alberni. If some of these occupants are transitioning from drug addiction, while they're in a really good location next to the Frigstad Harborview Apartments, more drug dealers there than I've ever met, it seems to me little or no consideration has been made for a more feasible long-term location. Instead, the city is using a temporary use permit to stifle the community's involvement, circumvent the official community plan, and avoid the normal process of rezoning this property. I cannot believe this. 25 more people living in a business area. There's not enough room in the Bread of Life. Their backyard is about the size of this room. And they're bad neighbors already, and I'm sure it's going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would anybody else like to come up and speak? Either in support of or against this temporary use permit?
I believe I have 10 minutes reserved to speak.
3 minutes.
No, I signed a letter, I asked permission to give a 10-minute presentation.
No, it's 3 minutes, sorry.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wasted my time signing up to come and speak anymore. The last time I was in city council was a couple, 3 years.
Can you please state your name for the
My name's
record,
Keith
please?
Ambrose. I live right behind the soup kitchen. Last time I spoke at city council to the acting mayor, Ms. Solda cut me off, so I didn't get my 10 minutes. So I'm a bit upset about that. So anyhow, here's the deal. I've been a neighbor of the soup kitchen since the soup kitchen started with Vera. The soup kitchen has been a horrendous neighbor. I have the Frigstad building for neighbors. A long time ago, there was a little bit of a war between myself and all the people at the Frigstad, including the RCMP and the drug dealers. And I managed to get through that time. It was a really rough time down there, but the Frigstad's not my worst neighbor. They got people who are in need. They need some assistance. They're living a little rough, and they're the customers of the soup kitchen, by the way, and the soup kitchen like to tell you otherwise in years past. So, only recently have I noticed that the people aren't at the back of the soup kitchen getting all whacked on their Scooby snacks and, you know, taking their dump in my yard and Rick's yard. It's plagued us. It's horrible. It's horrible. You guys can control, the city council, the city can control a lot. You can't control the sirens. You can't control the screaming. If they put a balcony out there, I heard it's private. There's no privacy. I'm looking right at it, all of it, every inch of the square ground. And I spent $3,500 for an 8-foot chain link fence, which I'm going to put out as a second fence barrier to keep them from burning my building to the ground. I'm going to take some precautions myself. It's going to cost some money. I can look forward, like I can look, down towards the ocean and pretend this isn't happening. And I do have plans to leave Port Alberni, because Port Alberni, I'm a retiree now. I worked my whole life. I'm a taxpayer. There's no inclusiveness in this plan. I'm a neighbor. I wasn't included in anything. I'd like to be included before you guys sign off on it. I'd like to have some discussion with these people. I know what the mistakes are making. I've been watching them forever. And they're very easy to correct. They have a sign in their front window that says they need some help. No. They have people come into that soup kitchen, and you, the community, label them as drug addicts, and then you dismiss them as useless. Now, I'm a drug addict. I've been a drug addict since grade 7. I started drinking beer, chasing girls, and doing drugs. Now, I'm not that good with the women, and beer's okay. The drugs I've been doing my whole life. I've done everything in my life. And I'm not a drug addict. I do drugs. Right? It's not a problem. I make choices. If I were homeless, I would not choose a doorway. I would be in the ravine there. You come visit my camp. It'd be the nicest place in Port Alberni. You'd be jealous. Then you'd tax me. Now, this use, these people, you Councillor, I'm sorry, Councillor Haggard, you
Yes.
mentioned early in today's meeting, what can the city do to help with the problem at the hospital? Okay, well, I'm a senior citizen now, and it was mentioned to me out in the back of the room here that don't need the hospital, Keith, because you ain't getting there. Of course I'm not getting there. I'm last in line. There's the drug dealers, I'm seeing the drug addicts, unfortunately, this problem that we have as a society has plagued our hospital system. It's ruining the hospital system. You can't birth enough doctors, nurses, healthcare practitioners to fix this problem. At the same time, somebody's trying to make a job of this. This thing's been in the works for a long time. I'm not a dummy. I can read it. I can read that you wanted to know what the final plan is. It's right here. It says right here, and I can read between the lines because I do have special powers, although I said 1 year I didn't. That's bull. I have the power of observation. Okay, here's one of the things. It was noted by the applicant that the Bread of Life Center is now operated by the Salvation Army, and the intent of the temporary use permit was to allow more time to explore possible options for a long-term facility to determine and assess community impact. Well, I have the abilities, the special abilities, I can tell you what the impact will be. Victoria's taking care of housing. They haven't taken care of the problem on the street because it's not a housing problem. So the problem that the businesses that are plagued by it in Victoria, apparently in Edmonton and Chinatown, they don't even let you in the store. All the doors are locked. You knock on the door, right? That's how I ran my business. I'm going to have some fence like you don't know, because that's what we got to do. So here's the plan. Here's the plan. It's on the same page. Okay. And I'm just reading between the lines. I'm no dummy. A recent sale of the empty nearby Bank of Montreal building. I'm going to tell you what happened to the Bank of Montreal building, folks. It was driven across town by the soup kitchen's patrons, okay? One man in particular. And so apparently is the co-op, the bank there, whatever that is called, the credit union, excuse me. All of us are going to be forced across town. Now, I can run my business like they do in New York. I can shutter it up, and there can be vandalism all over. I can live. No, I can't. I'm leaving. But I don't have the equity to move. So here's the plan. A recent sale of the empty nearby Bank of Montreal has taken place, and the Bread of Life has not yet met with the new owners. I don't think they wanted to meet with the new owners to do the good neighbor thing, because I'm pretty accessible. I think they're looking at that bank as a permanent site.
Mr. Ambrose, can we just get you to maybe...
Here's what else happened in Port Alberni recently, before this happened. I think Colin Minions here was involved in this. I heard this suggestion. I was horrified. So it was suggested that they partner with, I believe, the Pivot Society out of Vancouver, and they were going to take the Beaufort and triple the capacity of the Impossible to house and dump them in the downtown core. So, folks, I just hope you don't sign off on this. Let us have a chat, like real neighbors. Like, this hasn't been done right. This hasn't been done right. And then I look on this paper here that somebody handed me, and it says, here's my name here. It doesn't say anything. Obviously, I was included with no comment. You just heard my comments. Some of them.
Can you just wind up, please?
I'm
You're
going to
sitting
wind up.
over
I'm
your
going to wind
3
up. But here's how
minutes.
you do it. This is this category, and then the next category is Director of Corporate Services. You're going to have a public notice and have a public hearing for 4738 Athol. I believe that's probably the old dance studio, right? A public hearing. That's what you require. That gentleman's trying to help this community and create jobs, and he spent like $1 million. Yeah. And let's have a public hearing, I guess, for him.
Yeah. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak from the audience? Come on up. Just state your name, please, for the record. Thank you.
I'm Pat Cremeen. I have a new office on 3rd Avenue where people sleep in the doorway. So I have them moved on to other places. I'd like to thank H&R Block because they are frequently the only place that people can actually cash their checks. So they think they offer a great contribution to the clients that I see. I've dealt with 1,200 people who have disability, who are now on disabilities, and they have various stories of very serious abuse growing up, and now they're experiencing very serious abuse as adults. And I'm not sure exactly how we do a plan to cope with all of it. There are 70 people living in the shelter, and it's full to capacity and more. We're asking, the Salvation Army is asking for 25 beds. The Friendship Center is looking to put up 15 potential places. We, in my view, still have about 150 people sleeping in tents or sleeping in cars. There can be an overall plan. I've seen places in the US where churches allowed people to park their cars and sleep in them. That might be a solution. My sister lives in a building in Toronto that is funded by the city and has enormous amounts of support for everything that they need. I'm not sure how the city puts together a plan that doesn't offend everyone and still accommodates another 150 abused adults. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Would anyone else like to come up to speak? Neil, and then the lady.
It all comes down to the same thing, and I've listened to everyone speaking. Councillor Washington mentioned that when he talked about the long-term plan. Councillor Paulson had, I believe you said that your concern was location. And I'm not against what's happening, Colin. You're in a tight position as to how do you deal with a problem that should be dealt with by both provincial and federal governments, not thrown on the backs of municipalities. And I don't know what pressures are put on them. But I wish there was more information about a long-term plan. We're right on that corridor from the Bread of Life right down to the needles that's distributed and end up at Dry Creek Park, which I walk my dog every day. We have a group of people who pick up the garbage there. They go around with their bins. So that area certainly is not conducive to the environment we're trying to create in the municipality. And I'm a little disappointed that more information isn't coming forward about a long-term plan and what efforts have been put into that. That's the only solution, and what our provincial and federal governments do, they just say, go ahead and it's our responsibility. It is, but not only ours. Annoys me to no end. But I'm not against this program only because where else are we going at this point in time?
Thank you. Would you like to come up and be next, please?
Hello, I'm Sherry Edgar. I'm a hereditary chief for Sishot First Nation, as well as a supervisor for the Bread of Life. I've been working at the Bread of Life for the past year now, and I was a part of the overnight program that we started back in December, I believe it was December 25th. We opened up our doors for a 24-hour service, and I think that was a good trial for us to see and moving forward. We made a lot of mistakes. We were learning. We know what to do. We're building an outdoor space, as Colin mentioned, so that we can contain the clientele out in the back so they're not out on the street smoking. We're trying to build that outdoor space to make sure we built the fence to try to contain. We, the staff, we talk daily. We have meetings daily about how we can be better neighbors about going outside, checking to make sure garbage is being picked up, making sure there's no paraphernalia, needles, what have you, on the streets. Housing 25 people, I'm just astounded that this conversation is happening. These people deserve a place to sleep, irregardless of what got them there. They're not bad people. They do bad things to get their drugs, I will say that, but they're not bad people. All we're doing is trying to give 25 people a place to sleep in substandard, sub-zero temperatures during the winter. These horrible hot nights that we have in the valley, we're trying to protect these people and give them a safe space. That's all we're trying to do. We're not attracting anybody else into the area that's not already there. We feed 150 people a day. And then they're off and they're sleeping in everybody's doorways because they don't have a place to go. Where are they supposed to go? We can do better. You know, if we have this opportunity to at least sleep 25 of them, and get them off the streets. Some of these people over the past, like when we had our housing in the wintertime, some of them found treatment, some of them have gone away to work, some of them have gone home to their families, because we build relationships with them in the sense where they learn to trust us. They talk to us. We get to know them, and once we get to know them, we're able to create a plan for them, whether it be treatment, whether it be detox, whatever it is. It's building relationships with these people and trying to get them the long term off the streets into treatment, moving forward. And I think without us, what do they have? What's out there? Sometimes we're all that they have. At the end of the day, they come to me, they come to my staff, and they thank us for being there for them because it's all they have. We will have a washer and dryer. We will have showers. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner for them. We have computers for them to access so they can do resumes, so they can contact families, whatever it is, their banking, whatever it is they need to do, we're trying. No, we're not the perfect neighbors as of yet, but we're working on it. We are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colin, I have a question for you. Is there going to be counseling on site for your residents?
We will, as part of the BC Housing budget, there'll be case management, so one-on-one work on making plans. Often, if there's not a service that we can directly provide, then we will have partnerships or agreements with other agencies to connect people with those services. So it's just being a part of a bigger picture.
Great, thank you. And I just want to bring up a couple of points that have been mentioned. I think it was Mr. Ambrose that mentioned the Bank of Montreal left and another person bought the Bank of Montreal building, which is true. The building was bought by Coastal Restoration Society, and they actually wrote a letter of support for the project. And you mentioned the credit union leaving. I believe that they're leaving not because of people sleeping in their doorways. They are leaving and moving to the other side of town because the regional district has outgrown their current space and they need to take over their office spaces. So that's why they're moving. So just a couple of clarifications there.
Can I clarify something?
Yes, sir. Yeah, come on up to the microphone, please.
Nobody's begrudging Bread of Life. They should be somewhere in this town. It should be bigger, better, and somewhere else. They're on 3rd Avenue. We pay commercial taxes. We don't expect these things in the middle of commercial properties. You know, and you mentioned counseling. What about security? You know, and are these people local people now? Are we bringing people from out of town to live in the Bread of Life? And what kind of security is there going to be? Like 25 more. Like, it's bad now. 25 more that live there. Right now, the people that come to the Bread of Life are traveling to the Bread of Life. And then maybe sleeping in my doorstep or other people's doorsteps. 25 more.
Yeah, thank you.
Bread of Life is great, just not on 3rd Avenue.
Todd, would you like to come up and speak? Can you please state your name for the record, please?
Thank you. Todd Patola, 4310 Latham Road, Port Alberni. I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments made by the public and by Councillor Paulson. The question about whether this is the right thing in the right place. I'm not going to comment on whether it is or it isn't. That's certainly up to the public review process and council to decide. But I would like to point out when Ms. Edgar spoke and said that the Sally Ann is the only thing that these people have, and what else is there? In fact, that's an incorrect comment. There are numerous organizations in Port Alberni, and the reason I raise that is because it speaks to Councillor Paulson's comment that this might not be the right place, and other citizens have commented that we're creating this corridor for a certain demographic of people to live in, where the city's strategic plan suggests that we should have an inclusive community. And I'll just point out that other housing facilities that are run by KUAS, by PASS, by Houseit, by Sage Haven, etc., exist in other residential areas of the community that create that inclusive nature of the community. So just a few comments for council to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up and speak? Yep, come on up.
Can I do that one more time? I believe this is a done deal. I've heard your opinions. I know I know these people need help. I don't think anybody's against the Bread of Life or the soup kitchen or the help that people may receive. Long term, I've been there long term. This is not working, folks. These people are if the more you give somebody that they don't have to do, the less they'll ever do. You all know that. You all had family. Somebody had a mom here besides myself. Now, here's the deal. They got a help wanted thing in their window. Those people are all viable. All of these people who are labeled as in desperate need, that's not what I see. I see viable people. I see the work that they do. I see the amount of hours. They're night people. They're out at night. You people are going home and you don't see this stuff, right? But I see people who I wouldn't give up on. I wouldn't give up on them at all and label them. And then say somebody else has to work to feed. It's what they're doing is creating an industry, and when you build it, they will come. They will come from all over Canada. The Mayor of Victoria pulled this stunt, and she invited the people, we'll house all the homeless. Well, they did. They came from Ontario, they came from Quebec, they came from Alberta. They went to Mountain Equipment Co-op, they bought their first tent, and they parked themselves. They tried to get it, they thought it was gonna be better. If you build it, they will come. Now, nobody's elevating these people. There are better outfits in Port Alberni that are helping. There are. These people won't go where there's rules. So becoming a better neighbor with no rules, no. And here's part of the problem. I think religion gets in the way a lot when it comes to drugs. So they should just change their policy to let the drugs be done on site. Why do they got to go out in a doorway to do their drugs? Why? That's what they're doing now, right? That's what they're doing now. So if they're going to bring drug addicts into their home, then they have a responsibility to the neighbors. They'll never meet that, I'll guarantee you that. But they should allow those people to do their drugs in the building, on site, inside the building.
Okay.
That will contain a lot. You're doing it anyhow. You just don't ignore their drug problem.
Okay.
And tell us we're going to absorb all of. Oh, you know what? And thank you for. I signed up here for a 10-minute talk. That's the second time you people have cut me off. This is really nice.
Actually,
I was entitled to that. I signed up properly. I used the proper services that are.
Actually, Keith, I was watching the clock. You were pretty close to 10 minutes.
Thanks a lot. I know I took 10 minutes. Watch me. I do a lot of things.
Before we close up, I'd like to ask council if they had any further questions or comments on the temporary use permit. Councillor Paulson?
I know that the last council meeting that I voted against this, and I'm going to vote against it again, because I still feel that it's not the proper environment. When I look at the overall, with its relationship to Harborview, squash courts across the street, it's not a great environment to even try and transition or rehab somebody in, because there's outside influences. I personally am involved in a society that is providing housing, affordable housing, not shelter housing. We're going through a situation at the moment where there's disrespect and abuse to our new property. And I won't go into that story, but having witnessed that firsthand, I'm not comfortable with this. Now, having said that, I am really, really pleased, and I want to give credit to the Bread of Life and the Salvation Army with regards to the work they do. I'm not against trying to help people that are helpless or looking for help. I'm speaking about the actual location. I'm talking about the environment in that location, which at this present time is not good. I commend you guys for going to Dog Mountain Coastal Restorations and informing those people about what's going on there, and I that has softened my position a little, but also hearing the impassioned pleas today of neighbors and stuff, I can't support it. I suppose my brother always told me for every problem there is a solution, and I always look at compromises, and I look at the motion as it's presented there, and I'm just spitballing here. I wouldn't accept it on the basis of the motion as it reads. As a compromise, could probably be talked into a 1-year temporary use permit with a reporting out of checks and balances or a review of the program after the year, and measure successes and failures. And I hope it would be more successes than failures. I would like to see calls for service, over a year. And I'd also like to see a review of the impact on the general surrounding community. So the motion as it is, I would only support one that has probably more conditions attached to it, if you will. So at this point in time, I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like it's ruled out in the recommendation, that it has to have the completion of the Good Neighbor Agreement, and that the city, if something goes sideways, can cancel it at any time. So we could cancel it in 6 months. We could cancel it in a year, like Councillor Paulson would like.
Oh, I didn't say cancel it.
Oh, I know, just review. But I mean, we could ask for a review after 6 months. But number one there, completion of the Good Neighbor Agreement before this evening that goes through. So I mean, Colin and Michael got a lot of work to do. I say let's give them a shot.
Thank you, Councillor Washington. Michael, did you want to come up and speak, please?
First, I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity to come before you. And I do want to thank everybody who wrote the wonderful letters of support. We've talked about Coastal Restorations, Dog Mountain, Sage Haven, Alberni Online, Steampunk. So many of our neighbors have seen the good work that our staff and volunteers have done walking with people when we had it overnight before. Had so many comments about how people who were in their doorways were now able to come inside. And absolutely, I want to thank Colin and others for reaching out to many people in the community. I know myself, Rick, I dropped by your business a number of times. Yes, and left my card. But I guess he was unable to get back to me. I do want to address the idea of 25 new people coming into the neighborhood. There won't be new people coming into the neighborhood. The people who have resided with us before overnights when they were in a drop-in center and so had to just put their heads on a desk, those are people who live in the area who otherwise would be in the doorways. And now we want to be able to provide them with a safe, secure place where we can provide, again, the supports to help them go to the next steps. Because we all know this is nobody's permanent solution. And one of the wonderful things about this, one of the gentlemen here mentioned volunteering, and that's one of the real blessings. Some of the folks we've walked with who have had some real challenges are now volunteering and helping with us every day and contributing and finding meaning and purpose in life. And I just thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about this, I think, this wonderful opportunity to continue to help those in need in our community and to continue to help our community as a whole. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Poon.
Thank you. I was in support of this last council meeting, and I want to say that I remain supportive of this application, and I really strongly believe that a person's ability to change their lives, to access services to change their lives, is very much contingent on having a place to live or a place to sleep. And so I will vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've heard from people in support and not in support. We've heard from council. So now I'd like to ask for Councillor Poon if she would like to read the motion, and then we'll take a vote.
Certainly. I'll move that council issue temporary use permit number 22-02 and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit for that portion of the property, as shown on page 3 of the staff report and highlighted in yellow, located at 3130 3rd Avenue, Bread of Life Center, to operate a transition house subject to the following conditions being met to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services as follows. 1. Completion of a good neighbor agreement. 2. An improved fire plan. 3. Compliance with permits for renovation and operations that have been approved to the satisfaction of the building inspector. And 4. An RCMP approved safety plan.
Do you have a seconder?
Second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any final comments before we call for the vote? All those in favor?
What about the parking? What about the parking?
I'm sorry, we're calling for a vote. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Could we ask the mayor to come back in? If you're homeless, you probably don't have a car. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. We will move on to item number 4 from the Director of Corporate Services, rescheduling of public hearing for 4738 Ethel Street.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council may recall that they were asked to give readings to amending bylaws and schedule a public hearing as it related to a development on Athol Street. We just want to advise Council that the legislative requirements as per notification failed to be met, so we're looking to Council to reschedule that public hearing.
Thank you. Are there questions from Council on this? Okay, Councillor Washington, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council reschedule the public hearing scheduled for July 11, 2022 for 4738 Athol Street to Monday, August 8, 2022 at 6 p.m. in City Hall, Council Chambers, and direct staff to reissue the public notice as required.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Paulson. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. And item number 5 from the Director of Corporate Services, 2022 Summary of Council Resolutions.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. So just for council's information, on a quarterly basis, we bring forward resolutions which are directives of council which summarize all those directives for the year, and they're brought back for council's information. Just to highlight, approximately 11 of the resolutions remain outstanding. And if council has any questions with regards to what is on that list, staff are happy to answer those.
Thank you. Any questions on resolutions? I think this really highlights the amount of work we ask our staff to do as a result of our council meetings. So thanks to all who have kept all of those items moving along. Okay, and this is just for information, so if there's no questions, we'll just continue on. Item number 6, the Community Economic Development Initiative, the SETI program, and we have a verbal report from the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. As council's aware, there was an application made with Hoopachesset, Shashot, and City of Port Alberni Council. It's an economic development initiative. Port Alberni was one of the 8 communities across Canada that was approved in its application, along with our First Nation partners. With that program, a part of that is that council then commits to the work that's required, which is approximately 3 years, and the program operator has looked to each participant to consider the motion that is on your agenda this afternoon.
Thank you. So this won't be anything new to council, but are there any questions about this resolution? We had some discussion at the working group around whether to bring this resolution forward now, or the other option was before our first council to council working group, joint meeting, and we opted to wait until the meeting had already happened, just so that all of council had a better understanding of really the function of SETI and how that work was going to kind of happen over the next 3 years. So it's coming forward to council now just to reaffirm, following that joint meeting that we had, the work that needs to take place and what the next 3 years will look like, and commit to it. Okay. Councillor Haggard, would you like to read the motion if there's no questions? And it is long. I think it is best if we read it, just as a result of, or just because it is a very important program that we've been accepted into.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move, whereas the City of Port Alberni intends to improve intergovernmental relations and enter into tripartite government-to-government relationship with Hoopachesset First Nation and Shashot First Nation, whereas the City of Port Alberni commits the participation of the community and the First Nation Municipal Community Economic Development Initiative Program for this date of July 11th, 2022 until January 2025. Whereas the City of Port Alberni Council has appointed Mayor Shari Minins as their elected official working group champion. And do we have an alternate?
Sorry, we were supposed to talk about that before. I believe we appointed Councillor Solda as the alternate. However, we couldn't remember if we actually made a motion for that or if we just discussed it. So is council comfortable continuing with the alternate being Councillor Solda? Okay, so she's not here today to accept, but she does accept.
Okay,
and
thank
if we could just insert her name.
If you want to decline, show up to the meeting.
That's right. Don't be sick if you want to not get appointed.
And Councillor Solda as the alternate, whereas the City of Port Alberni has appointed Scott Smith, Director of Development Services, Deputy CAO, and Pat Deacon, Economic Development Manager, as their staff working group champions. And whereas the City of Port Alberni commits to provide the following resources in collaboration with the Hoopachesset First Nation and Shashot First Nation through a collaborative joint working group. Elected and staff working group champions meet monthly with the Hoopachesset First Nation and Shashot First Nation working group champions as a joint working group throughout the SETI program. Elected official SETI champions will give an average of 3 to 5 hours each month to SETI, and staff SETI champions will give an average of 5 hours each month to SETI. Coordinate a contingency plan for the city working group champion should a designated person leave their position prior to January 2025. Elected and staff SETI champions will prepare an onboarding process for the replacement champions. Support the SETI team to organize and participate in 5 1 to 1.5 day joint workshops between June 2022 and January 2025, ensuring there is representation of the elected officials, senior administration, economic development, and land management planning staff from each community at each workshop. Organize ongoing community engagement to keep the community informed about SETI program participation, partnership with Hupacheset First Nation and Shuswap First Nation in the Joint Community Economic Development Initiatives, agree to maintain communication with SETI staff and to assist with coordinating logistics of community visits, strategic meetings, and workshops as appropriate. Provide in-kind and financial resources above and beyond what can be reimbursed throughout the SETI program to hold the meetings and workshops. These expenses could include council or staff mileage to and from venue, in-kind meeting space, and extra catering expenses. Provide additional administrative and subject matter staff time and support as required by the Joint Working Group. Actively participate in the planning for and more management of the jointly assessed capacity development grant. Be it hereby resolved that Council for the City of Port Alberni supports the participation in First Nation Municipal Community Economic Development Initiative from the date of this council resolution until January 2025.
Thank you
Second.
so much. Seconded by Councillor Poon. And for members of the public's awareness, because a lot of people aren't aware what the SETI program is, of course, we were one of 8 communities selected across Canada to participate in this partnership over the next 3 years, so we're really excited about that. But it's a very small amount of grant funding. It's very much more about relationship building and just having an opportunity to formally, and in a way that is facilitated by a professional, be coming to that table every single month, the 3 of our governments. So we're really excited just about that opportunity. We've, I think, done a lot of work over the last few years to build relationships, government to government and person to person with both Shuswap and Hupacheset. But the 3 of us coming together, we think is a lot more meaningful rather than us meeting one-on-one. So we're really excited just to have that facilitated relationship, to be able to work when challenges come up, to be able to know that we're coming back to that table every single month at minimum, to work through anything that does come up, and to just eventually, and we haven't gotten to, choosing a project, but eventually there will be usually a small project chosen that the 3 partners will work on together. So we're really grateful to the program being available and that we were able to be selected for it, and of course to each of our 3 governments being willing to participate. So with that, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to bylaws, and item number 1 is from the Director of Finance, Waterworks and Sewer Bylaw Amendments for 2022.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So with the staff report today, the request is in front of Council to amend the sewer and water bylaws to allow the revenue generation that we have in the financial plan for 2022-2026. If you recall, Council, going back many years, we started the program as far as long-term management, asset management of our water and sewer, also including the operations of our water and sewer functions. These services are paid for by fees and services that are charged through this bylaw, and there is no taxation that's involved with the water and sewer services that are provided by the city. The software is updated annually to reflect the projects within the financial plan, also including the details as far as the costs that are anticipated for these. As a result, the recommendation in the financial plan was to increase it 5% for both the water and sewer, and today the draft bylaws are in front of Council for consideration to address that requirement for 2022. So if there's any questions that Council has, we can address those.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're not in this to make money, we're just in this to break even, right?
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Washington, the intent of this is to cover the cost of water and sewer separately, And with that, these funds that are collected for water and sewer are also separated, so they remain within separate funds. So in accounting, we call it fund accounting, so.
You're the only ones who do.
Aye.
Other questions? Okay, I just wanted to comment that I think that we've been talking a lot lately about asset management, especially with some of the larger projects that have come up. And this is an example of one of the areas of asset management that we did at least get a start on quite early on. And quite a few years ago now, we began increasing rates for water and sewer. And I just want to recognize to members of the public that those increases have not been easy, and we know that. However, they are in an attempt to put our system into a sustainable way so that we know that when those big projects come up, we have the reserves in place. And of course, now we're talking about the next step of that, a more detailed asset management plan. But I think this is really good work that councils before us, I think the Econic study was 2012 or 2013, councils before us took on, needs to be updated now, but it's gotten us to a place where we were able to do the sewage lagoon work, and we've been able to react as, some of our bigger projects have come forward and be more proactive in planning to make sure reserves are in place. So I know these increases are challenging and continue to be challenging, but I think that they are incredibly important to make sure that our probably most valuable, most important systems continue to be maintained in a way that will keep them working long term. Councillor Paulson, would you like to read the motions?
I'd like to move that that City of Port Alberni Waterworks bylaw number 5062, 2022 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried.
B, that City of Port Alberni Waterworks bylaw number 5062, 2022 be read a second time.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried.
C, that City of Port Alberni Waterworks bylaw number 5062, 2022 be read a third time.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments still on the motion, all in favor? Carried.
And D, that City of Port Alberni sewer connection and regulation bylaw number 5063, 2022 be now introduced and read a first time.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments or questions on this one, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And E, that City of Port Alberni sewer connection and regulation bylaw number 5063, 2022 be read a second time.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried.
And last but not least, F, that City of Port Alberni sewer connection and regulation bylaw number 5063, 2022 be read a third time.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew. And correspondence for action, we have two items. The first one is an email received July 6th, 2022 from Coastline Endurance Running requesting council authorization for access to city streets and trails for a trail running event. Are there any questions on this?
Music going on somewhere. Oh.
Are there any questions on this event or use of city streets? Councillor Paulson.
I just want to make a general comment, if I might. This is a great event. They're talking about upwards of 400 contestants. It's a family event. I think that when we talk about tourism, we think about people buying hamburgers and staying in hotels. This is another example of sports tourism. Now, I just want to bring to and highlight this past weekend, minor softball hosted a provincial U15 girls softball tournament with people from all over the province. Today, the junior prep camp is opening and it's full, I understand it's full regalia, not COVID regalia, today. And they bring up to, I think they were like 7,000 or 8,000 kids and families throughout. So I just want to recognize that tourism is multifaceted. This is a an example of sports tourism, and this event here, it's clean, it's green, it's fun, I like it.
Thank you. Go ahead and read the motion.
Oh, lucky me. Yeah. I'd move that council authorize coastline endurance running access to city streets, trails on Saturday, July 23rd, 22 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the purpose of a trail running event starting at the Port Alberni Rugby Club and following the routes as outlined in the attached map, subject to the notification of emergency services and BC Transit, consultation with all affected businesses and residents. They would be responsible for implementation of a traffic safety plan, including qualified traffic control personnel as required. Provision of standard liability insurance in the amount of $5 million. Event organizers are responsible for removal of all flagging tape and stakes. Event organizers acknowledge that these trails are open to the public, and as such, trails will need to be shared accordingly. Event organizers acknowledge trails will be enjoyed as is.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Any comments on this? Okay, I think it's a great event as well, and excited that they're going through our community. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item number 2, a letter dated July 5th, 2022 from the Alberni District Fall Fair Association providing information regarding the 75th annual Fall Fair scheduled to take place September 9th to 11th and requesting access to city streets for the Fall Fair Parade. Any questions or comments on this one? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just happy to see, the Fall Fair continuing and the parade back on the street. I know a lot of people missed the parades in the last couple of years, so it's great to get back into them. Thank you.
Agreed. Councillor Washington, would you like to read the motion?
My friends, yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council authorize the Alberni District Fall Fair Association access to city streets on Saturday, September 10, 2022 from 11 a.m. till approximately 12 p.m. for the purpose of a parade from 12th Avenue down Bird Street along 10th Avenue to Alderwood Street, subject to the notification of emergency services and BC Transit, consultation with all affected businesses and residents, responsible for implementation of a traffic plan including qualified traffic control personnel as required, and provision of the standard liability insurance of the amount of $5 million.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Washington, second by Councillor Haggard. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And proclamations, we have a letter received July 6th, 2022 from Special Olympics British Columbia requesting a proclamation. Would somebody like to read that? Councillor Poon.
I'll move that council proclaim the week of July 18th to 24th, 2022 as Special Olympics Global Week of Inclusion in the city of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Washington. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And correspondence for information. Twyla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So 3 items of correspondence, 1 communication from Island Health, and it's just laying out with regards to the extreme heat, and hopefully we'll experience some of that in short order. We have correspondence from B. Kessinger regarding the Connect the Keys Pathway project. And just want to, unfortunately, we don't have planning staff in attendance today, but just to acknowledge that at the recent conference that was held last week, the City of Port Alberni was the winner of the 2022 Award for Excellence in Planning Practice, and that relates to the work done for the Uptown District Revitalization Strategy.
Thank you very much. And I know that Brian worked very hard on that project with, I think VIU was the students we had working, and Caitlin had a lot to do with that as well. So great work to them on that plan. Okay, any items councillors would like to speak to? Okay, I will just speak to the letter from Bob Kannegeezer, who I know, Bob, you're sitting in the audience. Just wanted to appreciate that, you know, there's a lot of different views, and I think you've asked some great questions in there. And a couple of the questions that you've got here are around maintenance, and maintenance is something that we have built in, and we built into the grant application, a commitment to maintenance. So we do have an idea of what that will be, and are committed to making sure that as we build new infrastructure going forward, that we are not building it without a full understanding of what it will look like to maintain it long term. And I know there's more, to that here, and I'd love to have kind of more of a conversation with you around it. But just wanted to comment that, Bob, I always really appreciate how you kind of bring even when you don't agree with something, always bring it in a respectful way. And I thought this letter was a great example of that. So thanks for that. Any other items councillors would like to highlight? Okay, seeing none. No reports from in camera, and council reports. So we've got council and city and regional district reports. Any items councillors would like to speak to? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to take a minute to thank the Industrial Heritage Society for allowing Mayor and Council to do a ride-along in the Canada Day Parade, and to also congratulate Angie Brake and her team for pulling her off again. So hats off to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Any other items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An issue that's really concerning me and concerning a lot of our members in our community, it was recently announced that the ER had a possible closure of 10 days in the month of July. And they managed to dodge that bullet. Then it was announced that there are possible closures for the months of August and September, which is extremely concerning for a community of our size, not just the city, but the regional district, people in Banfield, and also people in Parksville come and use our hospital. I don't know if people realize that, but it's very well used, and it's always busy and always full. So the probability that it may be closed and we have to drive over an hour to Nanaimo is extremely concerning to me. And also our current doctor shortage. A lot of our doctors are starting to age out, and my doctor is one of them. I'm terrified that he's going to retire. And most of the doctors, if not all the doctors in our community, do not take any new patients. And our clinic that we currently have operates on irregular hours. If you go up there, they may not even open at all, even though it's announced by signage and on their website. And it's not the best system that they have in use. So I know that the mayor has been having some conversations, and I'm just wondering what role the city could play in trying to help this issue.
Thank you. And I am going to get Pat Deacon to speak to this as well, just as he's been really involved in the conversations. But I think we have really, two issues here. We have our more immediate, concern around the emergency room, and this was brought to us, and as well has been brought to the province, and our MLA, Josie Osborne, has been incredibly active on personally making sure that several of those shifts have been able to be filled on a very quick timeline. And then in the greater scheme of things, we have obviously we're struggling with the same lack of physicians and shortage across the province and obviously across the country. But in BC, I think we have some, very unique issues here. And those have been getting a lot more media attention lately, which, I think can be very helpful to beginning to address them. And those have come up in some of our conversations with the physicians as well, greater changes that need to be made in order for us to continue as a province being able to be competitive to attract doctors to the province. So we have had a number of meetings. Myself, Pat Deacon, the regional district has been involved in some of those meetings. We've met with specific physicians locally, as well as our MLA and her staff, and then we've also met with hospital administrators. And previous to this, in the months leading up to this, we have met with hospital around nursing shortage as well, because right now the attention is very much on the physician shortage, but there is a nurse shortage and some inability to be able to be competitive there, that we've been working to make sure that Port Alberni can stay competitive. There are, in the greater scheme of things, on the longer term issue of making sure we attract physicians to the community, there are some communities who have been pretty successful in that. Lillooet and Quesnel have both been brought up to us a few times. So what we can do as a community, we are learning from what those communities have done. A few of them have hired professional recruiters. There's communities that have offered housing accommodations for physicians coming in and out of the community, or physicians who will come and work, for instance, on on call in the emergency room from other communities. And then there's been sort of like a concierge service that has been talked about as well, to make sure that all of the needs, whether it's transportation or renting a vehicle, or we can put together kind of a package to be able to bring doctors in short term to try the community, and then hopefully retain them here. There's also a really local push going on from several of our really invested newer physicians in the community who are younger, are energetic, and chose this community and are loving it here. And they've really done a lot of work to attracting some new physicians to the community over the last few years. But we absolutely have a shortage. I feel very fortunate to have a family doctor, but my doctor is retiring in September. And then I won't have one, and 2,500 people potentially, along with me if his practice isn't taken over. So there's some big concerns. We are working on them, across all levels, but I think we really have to start looking at what can be done to make our community more attractive than others in recruiting. And Pat, I'll let you just get up and add whatever you would like. And I think Pat was planning to bring to council anyways, some kind of the work going on in other communities to attract physicians. So we might have a report come forward in the future.
You will have a report in future, and Madam Mayor, I think you nailed it with respect to what is being done. Cities normally play a bit of a role, but a small role in the recruitment of personnel for businesses, including hospitals. And we have been both reaching out to communities that have been successful in recruiting personnel, healthcare personnel, and we've also just been doing an internet search for other communities and approaches that they're taking. As you can imagine, there are, I guess, some approaches that communities can't take or prohibited from taking with respect to recruitment, but increasingly communities are really pushing the bounds or the boundaries of what they can and will do. As the mayor mentioned, we know that some communities are providing housing. We are learning that bonuses help, but are not the only thing. And in some cases, we are learning that healthcare professionals have left even after a bonus has been paid, and willing to pay a penalty for doing that. So we are really doubling down on this issue. We are in constant communication, as the mayor said, with the MLA, with herself, with doctors at the hospital here, doctor in charge of the emergency room. And as the mayor said, we've got two issues. We're not the only community facing them. One are concerns about emergency room coverage, and the other concerns longer term about physician recruitment and coverage for those that are retiring. So there isn't an hour a waking hour goes by where I'm not thinking about this, worrying about it, looking for solutions to the matter. And we know that if there's a tie to a community that a professional has, that we're much more likely to recruit that person than if they don't know anything about us. Having said that, we're making sure that people do know about us. As the mayor said, some communities have returned to recruiting firms where the community pays if that recruiter is successful in bringing a new doctor into the community. So we're looking at every possible angle. We are involving the regional district. Daniel Sayland, the CAO there, has been in 2 communities prior to this where recruitment of healthcare professionals has been an issue. So Daniel has a bit of experience he's bringing to it. Unfortunately, our hospital district, so that's a committee, a board at the regional district level, does not have money to bring to bear on the project, and they're more focused around bricks and mortar, that approach. But we are meeting with them nevertheless to talk about the issue. We've reached out to organizations that might have a perspective on it or a solution, and we are also reaching out to high net worth individuals to see if they can bring something to bear.
And I would just add that the hospital district does have funds that could be used for this, and I think that myself and Councillor Corbeil, who both sit on the regional district board, will be bringing that. And you know, if that is the city investing funds and matching hospital district funds, although the hospital district includes the city, and so are already paying there, I think it's very important that we make sure that the regional district, the whole region, is actively contributing in helping address this issue. Often things just get put on the city because we're told that the regional district doesn't have funds, but there's a lot of reserves in the hospital district. So I have a hard time accepting that they don't have funds. But thank you for that, Pat. And
Yep.
And it is challenging. I mean, there's just not an excess of doctors around, but I've seen already as a result of, you know, the push that's being made. I know that Josie, we had we had a very last minute meeting with her when we first heard of these shortages. The first one was coming July 1st. We had a meeting with Josie the day that we heard about it. She took our meeting right away. She went right to Minister Dick's office and started talking about the issue. And a few days later, we had that first shift filled. So Josie is working incredibly hard on this, and we're looking to support her in any way we can. And I think the longer term piece of this is do we need a recruiter, or do we need to not necessarily be paying for housing? That's not necessarily required, but do we need to help with being able to provide these services and make sure they're available? And what is the city's role in that? What's the regional districts? We need to come together on a solution there. But the immediate issue is being every single day worked on. Okay. Councillor Paulson.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that you've had discussions with our MLA, and I hope that the conversation goes much deeper, in particular to the colleges of physicians and surgeons who have been protectionist over the years. An example would be a fully qualified healthcare aid worker from Alberta requires an additional 200 hours of competency training to qualify and work in BC. There has to come a time where we remove some of these barriers and they can actually challenge either through a one-time exam or whatever. I have heard stories of the same situation with regards to doctors, in particular doctors from Europe and Africa, where the roadblock is so monumental, they just go, I don't have a year or 2 or 3 to upgrade. I'm just not going there. And I think we have to remove those barriers. There's lots of qualified people that we're turning away too.
Yeah, we heard of a doctor trained internationally who is in BC right now and said, I want to be working and I'm not able to be working. And I think that was just in the news today or yesterday. There's also some conversations going on around doctors in their residency who have more training than potentially some of the family doctors who are working in the emergency room, just in emergency training, and them not being able to step in and help as a result of the College of Physicians. So I think that there's definitely more work that needs to be done with the College of Physicians to make sure we're not creating barriers.
Probably a 50-year-old doctorate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of work there, and that's probably a part of the longer term push, but something that we all need to be talking about. And I think that needs to be led by the provincial government, but we can be a part of it, and Josie is a great advocate there.
So we have been doing a real deep dive, and it has also led us to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, but we are leaving those issues with the MLA and the doctors themselves, but we're certainly acquainting ourselves with the issues there and bringing that perspective.
Councillor Haggard.
I think with the lack of general practitioners in our community, it places that much extra pressure on our ER, because if you don't have a doctor to go to with very limited hours at the clinic, what do? You have to go to the emergency room, and it just exacerbates the problem, and it's just ongoing and ongoing. So it's great that we're finding immediate solutions to keep her open, but our long-term goal should be to attract new doctors. Thank you.
We're very conscious of that, and it's triage, so emergency room first.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks for that, Pat.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Madam Mayor, for being proactive on this.
No problem. Thank you. We'll move on to question period, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Would anyone like to ask questions today? Bob. We know who you are, but if you don't mind just stating your name and address.
Bob Kangizer, I can't resist. I'm glad you read my letter that I wrote. That's good. So I'll ask the question. Is council prepared to take a serious look at this ill-conceived key-to-key project that was dreamed as a waterfront project and follows a railway track? Sit back. Take a 10,000 or 1,000-foot view of what you're about to do and ask yourselves, is this really going to help this community? Is this something that's really a wise expenditure of taxpayers' dollars, municipal, federal, provincial? They're taxpayer dollars out of our pockets. And then ask yourselves, am I prepared to put this project ahead of the re-election schedule in October? Let's not make this a topic for your re-election in October. Thank you.
Thank you. If that's a question, I will just say thank you. There's a lot of conversations going on right now. We are still in the planning phases, but it is not intended to be a largely rail line trail. It is intended to be a largely waterfront trail.
The plan I saw definitely follows from Roger Street to Somas and follows the railway track.
Thank you.
That isn't mostly railway track. I don't know what is.
Thank you. Are there other questions from members of the public?
Hi, my name's Joseph Laskosic, and I just have a quick question. I was for a walk along the trail that was opened up July 1st to have a look what was there, along with a couple other gentlemen I was with. And just for a quick walk, nice fence. Lots of debris in the water, don't fall in there, you won't get out. So it was just nice to go down for a walk. My question is, I know that whole land that was purchased, there's going to be a lot of things, buildings have to come down, ground has to be taken out, there has to be a lot of expense on that, which is, there's no real plan for that yet. They're hoping somebody will step in and kind of do some of that, so there's not a cost to the community, a lot of that being absorbed by development. Just a thought, and I don't know anything about scrap metal. I don't know what the value of it is. Sometimes it fluctuates up and down. Sometimes you get good money for it. Sometimes you don't, I understand. I don't know what it's at this stage, but there is a lot of metal in there. A lot of those buildings that I could see from that walk were basically all metal that I could see. Inside I can't see, but outside I see tin on the roof. I see, metal beams, structures, the things that transported the logs here and there, all made of metal. And I don't know if a company that does, what do you call that, salvage? Yeah. If that's something that could be absorbed through salvage, would they make enough money out there willing to come in and do something? I don't know. I'm sure the city's looking at all those different things, but I sort of think probably metal's not that worth that much that they're willing to come in and say, okay, we're not going to charge anything. We'll just take the metal as our profit. We can make money on that. So I don't know if that's a possibility. Just a thought as I walked down there looking at all that buildings that were there. So that's the only question.
Thank you, Joseph. That's a great thought, and it is something that we are aware of, the salvage as an option, salvage value, and we hope to have more information coming out to the public soon on some of the, just a bit more clarity on direction and being able to provide more information for the public to answer questions like that in more detail. Are there any other questions people would like to ask today? Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Poon. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.